Well, my name is Malcolm Baird, and I'm a retired Navy lieutenant. And the subject that I was asked to speak on today was the generational relationship of for military service. And I wanted to kind of give a little bit of a description of growing up the son of a Navy veteran from World War II. My father was Robert Baird. He was born in 1924. About 3 or 4 months after Pearl Harbor, he was allowed to graduate early from his high school. He went to a private boarding school in Providence, Rhode Island, and he went directly into the Navy, initially as a seaman recruit, seaman apprentice, and worked his way up. He was assigned to destroyers, North Atlantic convoy duty, and ended up striking as a bosun's mate. Made third class. I picked up a lot of skills in small boat handling and all of the other docking and anchoring that the destroyer would do on both ends, before and after convoys. His first destroyer was torpedoed and sunk. He was rescued, and then during the interim, before reporting to another destroyer, he went to the Navy dive school. Back then it was hard hat divers, they were salvage divers. He became a Navy diver, reported to his next destroyer. By that time I think he was second class petty officer. He was one of the ship's divers. He was a gun captain for the midships gun aft. I need to pause here for just a second because I want to turn this. So as a gun captain on the midships aft gun, he did see quite a bit of action. They had several interactions with submarines in the North Atlantic, trying to block or disrupt the supply of goods and materials going to Great Britain during the war. Had no more, I guess you could say, damage to his second submarine, his second destroyer during that the end of his tour. And at the end of World War II, he was still single, and as he told the story, he was strongly encouraged not to get out immediately because they were concerned that if everybody got out of the military at the same time, it would overwhelm the U.S. economy and there would be a lot of economic problems as a result of it. So he voluntarily stayed in for an extra year after World War II, was assigned to a Navy transport ship, troop ship, and spent an entire year doing an around-the-world cruise. And I have many stories that he told about all of the different places that he visited in South America and Europe and Africa and Asia, and all of the people he met and all the fun they had, the parties after the war. It was let's say it was a party ship. It was probably the best cruise ship ride for a couple of thousand Navy sailors, single sailors, to go around the world and basically have fun after the war. Eventually he did get out. Shortly after getting out, he used his GI Bill to go to the University of New Hampshire and get a bachelor's degree. After getting his degree, in the process of trying to figure out what he was going to do with the rest of his life, and also while he was in 1948, he got married and I was born, the first of 3 children. But somewhere along in there, about when I was 1 or 2 years old, he and a friend of his purchased a Navy surplus torpedo retriever from Navy surplus in Boston, and they brought it up to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which was my hometown and his home. And they reconfigured it as a charter fishing boat. And I spent all of my young years through elementary school and a little bit beyond being taught all of the piloting and seamanship and boat handling skills that he learned in the Navy, helping him take care of the boat. I basically passed the Power Squadron course when I was in 6th grade, almost entirely due to his coaching and what I needed to know to do that. We used to do charter fishing, weekend charter fishing trips out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and once we got underway, I pretty much took the helm, and he helped the paying customers get their lines ready and cut bait and things like that. And I knew the area coming in and out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire very well. I used to have to stand on top of a Pepsi-Cola box to see out the windshield. That was my only constraint because I was of my height at the time. Ultimately, the operation and maintenance of that boat became a little bit too much, and he had purchased a gas station with his brother-in-law, and they were running the gas station, and then shortly after that he sold the gas station and became a manager at my mother's father had a trucking company, and that was the rest of his career. But he was very active in the veterans associations, the VFW, and a couple of other veterans organizations in Portsmouth, which is a relatively strong Navy town. There is a SAC Air Force base there, or there was. It's closed now, but there was a Navy shipyard there. And every time we would go in and out of port, there was this diesel submarine tied up at the Navy Reserve wharf that we would have to go by. And he would tell me stories about his experiences with submarines, which were on the receiving end of what they did. But he basically communicated that he had a lot of respect for them, and they were very effective during World War II until we developed radar and the ability to track them at greater distances and that type of thing. But Portsmouth Naval Shipyard was and still is the largest employer in that area, and they aggressively recruited from the high schools when I was growing up, and he encouraged me to volunteer for a 2-month summer internship at the shipyard, which was their primary purpose was to overhaul nuclear submarines. In the early days of World War II, they built probably two dozen of them or more. But in that time frame, the 50s and 60s, they were basically in the overhaul mode. Unfortunately for the shipyard, who was trying to encourage us to consider the shipyard as a career after high school, I was more inspired by the spaceships that I saw being overhauled. And there was always 3. There was one at the beginning, the middle, and the end of their overhaul period. And there were about 2 dozen of us in the group. We would go to a central location, and then the various shops at the shipyard would come by and say, here, carry my equipment, carry my tools, clean up after me, run coffee, stand fire watch, that type of thing. And I got to go with the shipyard workers down into the submarines, and I got to interact with the submarine crews. And I mean, I was a junior in high school. I was a little bit of a technology geek in high school. you know, science, technology, engineering, math, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 1965, and most people don't realize it, but 1965 was the first year of Star Trek on TV. And it was the middle of the space race. And we were racing to the, you know, the Soviet Union, to the moon, and there's just tremendous focus on science, technology, and engineering, and math, and space, and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was significantly inspired by that experience. But my real life, what I was really kind of focusing on in high school, was oceanography. I developed a love for the ocean, having spent my younger years on his boat and learning all about the fish that we caught and that type of thing. And after high school, I went to the University of New Hampshire, and I was going to major in marine microbiology and minor in biochemistry, because that was the area that I was most interested in. Vietnam was hot and heavy. There was a lot of stuff going on about the draft and so on. And but my focus was I love the ocean, and I wanted to be involved with it for the rest of my life. About halfway through my third semester, my parents only had enough money to fully cover my freshman year, and then I basically was working part-time and going to school full-time. And I very quickly realized in my third semester that I couldn't handle the course load for a science degree and work the number of hours that it took to pay for it. And recalling his stories about him going to college after World War II on the GI Bill, and how much fun it was and how much he enjoyed it, and how easy it was because it pretty much covered all of the tuition costs and everything, I figured that if he can do it, I can do it. So I went down at the end of my third semester to the Navy recruiter in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I actually went with my dad, and we walked in, and I pretty much said, sign me up, I'm ready to go. I need the GI Bill, and this. My dad's told me stories about the Navy, and he's convinced me that this is, you know, the best route to pay for my college and so on.
What year?
And this was in 1968, the spring semester, January in 1968. And the recruiter turned around to me and said, that's great. I really would love to, but we have a 6-month waiting list. Everybody who doesn't want to be in the Marine Corps or the Army right now because of Vietnam wants to be in the Navy or the Air Force. And I was immediately dejected and was turning around to leave. And he said, but while you're here, why don't you take the ASVAB exam? And back then, they used to administer the exam on paper right there in the recruiter's office. So for the next hour and a half, I sat there and took the exam. And at the end of it, he scored it. And apparently, I had scored much higher than they expected. He said, man, with this score, you could be anything or do anything you want in the Navy. I think I got something like a 95 out of 100 on that score, mostly due to what my father taught me and what I learned in high school and college. And I said, great, if you can get me in, I will obligate for 6 years to get advanced electronics and computer schools, and I want submarine duty. And that was pretty much because of my experience at the Naval Shipyard. And the recruiter said, that's nice to know, I'll keep that in mind. And but I was really expecting to get drafted, because I wasn't going back to school, I had to go to work, and I was very surprised. 2 weeks later, on a Friday afternoon, he calls me up at home and says, you still want to join the Navy? And I said, absolutely. He said, good, you meet me down here at the Federal Building in Portsmouth, the recruiter's office. And he said, the recruiter in Portland, Maine owes me a favor. And he drove me up to Portland, Maine. I had my physical, I was inducted into the Navy, he drove me home. And on Monday, my draft notice for the Army showed up in the mailbox. And back then, they always mailed the draft notices out on Friday, and there was no Saturday delivery. And I was not aware, but he was dating one of the secretaries in the draft board, which was on the second floor of the same building. And he would give her his short list. And if I had not been home to receive his phone call that Friday evening, I probably would have been in the Army on Monday. So everything worked out perfectly. I went to boot camp. I went to the Naval Guided Missile School at Dam Neck, Virginia for 15, 16 months. And all of that was due to the constant encouragement I received from him. Mm-hmm. And he told me before I went to boot camp, I still remember this discussion, he said, if there's nothing else that I can tell you, the most important thing to remember is volunteer often and early. Mm-hmm. And I didn't understand the logic behind that. Mm-hmm. But one of the first things that happened at boot camp is they basically had us all lined up, and the chief petty officer running my company in boot camp said, I'm looking for a volunteer to be master at arms. So remembering what my father said, I raised my hand and said, no problem, I'll do it. I had no idea what I was volunteering for. And it turns out that master at arms was one of my collateral duties, was being responsible for the barracks and making it inspection ready, seeing that it's inspection ready at all times. And I had about 5 or 6 guys that worked with me on the team. And while everybody else was out marching and learning how to drill, I was allowed to stay back in the barracks and, just take it easy and focus on keeping that place spotless and achieving all of the expectations of that chief petty officer. That was my first experience with volunteer often and early. Because usually when they ask you to volunteer for something, the first things that they ask for are the nicer assignments than they ask for later. They save the more difficult ones later. And the other thing I learned, as I'm going through Navy school and so on, is that when you volunteer, either to provide answers or participate and so on, they very quickly tell you to put your hand down and let somebody else do it. Mm-hmm. And I developed this reputation for being always supportive and proactive with regard to whatever the command was trying to accomplish, without even realizing what I was doing at the time. And that served me very well going forward. So I went through the Naval Guided Missile School at Dam Neck, Virginia. I finished the Polaris Electronics A school, and I went to and your assignment after that was 3 ratings. Mm-hmm. You were either going to be a navigational ET, electronics technician, you were going to be a fire control technician, which is basically a missile control center technician, or you're going to be a missile technician. And they let people choose in the order of their class standing. Mm-hmm. And they had 4 openings for navigation ET school, and I was number 5 in the class. So I relegated myself to going to the fire control technician ballistics class and learning all about missile targeting and the programming and the missile guidance and the targeting computers that talk to the missile and things like that. I kind of had wanted to be a navigation ET because there was a hierarchy of I guess you could say skills, if you will, or reputation. But it worked out very well, and at the end of my C school class, 2 weeks before graduation, the senior instructor pulls me aside and said, Baird, we've been watching you. Your performance is excellent. Your attitude is excellent. You're basically at the head of your class. We have a suggestion that might be career enhancing for you. One of the submarines at Groton, Connecticut, has lost one of the members of their fire control Division, unexpectedly. And if you would be willing to skip going to submarine school, which is another 2-week school that I was looking forward to, and go directly to the submarine, it would be career enhancing for you, and it would also mean that they wouldn't have to pull somebody else off shore duty early, or they wouldn't have to ask one of the sailors on the other crew, because as Blair said, blue crew, gold crew relationship, and they rotated every 100 days. And they wouldn't have to ask one of those other crew members to do a back-to-back patrol. In other words, 200 days on the submarine. And I basically, it took me about 2 minutes to decide, and I had mixed emotions because about halfway through my sea school, my wife and I got married. I met her my freshman year in college. We had been dating for 3 years. We had every intention of waiting for me to get out of the Navy after my enlistment to get married, and not a lot of other things about delaying marriage. But she was in her, she had just finished her second year at the University of New Hampshire, and she was having trouble paying her tuition. And it just seemed logical that the basic allowance for quarters would exactly cover her tuition costs. So we ended up announcing to our parents that we were getting married down in Virginia Beach. Nobody was happy about it. Eventually the marriage was expected to be up in New Hampshire where the extended family could participate. But a small cadre of her family and my family came down to Virginia Beach. We got married. We had a 1-week honeymoon. She went back to the University of New Hampshire to start her junior year. And I didn't see her. We got married on August 23rd. And I was graduating from sea school on the end of November. And we hadn't seen each other, and we were looking forward to having some time because I was going to initially go to Groton, Connecticut for submarine school. I was going to be able to commute back and forth and so on. But I explained to her, that under the circumstances it would be, very career enhancing for me to go pick up this other submarine. So 4 weeks after I graduated, and went back up to New England, I was in Rota, Spain, going on my first submarine patrol 2 days after Christmas. And I saw my wife, my recent bride, for only 3 weekends between the end of November and when I departed for my first patrol. And 100 days later, I came back and we had our second honeymoon. And I used to tell people that the secret to a happy marriage, we've been married for 51 years now, the secret to a happy marriage is spending 5.5 years underwater and having 13 honeymoons. Anytime we got back together after more than 3 months was another honeymoon. And it allowed us to continually rebuild our pair bond. And we did beat the odds. The submarine community had the highest divorce rate of any military community at that time, and it just worked out. But
Mac, we got about 6.5 minutes.
Okay.
About 6 minutes to reach 30.
Yes, and so basically, to bring things to a close, my father gave me a lot of encouragement along the way. He knew that my intent was to get out after my first enlistment and to go back to school, study oceanography, and be an oceanographer. I used the in-service Navy GI Bill to get a lot of courses done at night school. My transcript on my undergraduate degree reads University of New Hampshire, Boston University, Harvard, University of Washington, Seattle, Berkeley, University of Guam, Chapman College, and I finished at Rollins College Extension at Patrick Air Force Base because I re-enlisted at the last minute for 4 more years so that I could finish my bachelor's degree on the Navy's dime and then go to graduate school on the GI Bill and get a graduate degree in oceanography.
Wow.
And that was on track until after I got my degree from Rollins, the base command gave me the full court press to go to OCS. I got my commission. I did 11 more years as a weapons officer, as an engineer officer, as a navigation operations officer, and then I retired at the 20-year point. And I had my father coaching me all the way along. And he was very impressed when I got my commission.
He never achieved that, huh?
He was a first-class petty officer when he got out of the Navy. Petty officer E6, petty officer first class, bosun's mate, Navy diver.
Would you say that your dad was really the chief role model for the track that you took?
He was,
Yeah.
all the way along. Because he did it, I knew I could. And so there was never any question in my mind that that was always an option. I just didn't realize it at the beginning that it was going to be a 20-year career. And then, you know.
And the other thing, Mac, is what did you, and then once you got out of the Navy, what did you do after that?
Well, initially when I retired out here from Operational Test Support Unit 2 on the Range Sentinel, Navy submarine launch area support ship out of Port Canaveral, I wasn't planning on doing anything. I was going to be completely retired for 6 months before I even started looking for a job. And 2 weeks after I retired, I got a phone call on a Sunday afternoon and said, "You ready to go to work?" And I said, "Who is this?" And it was the deputy director of computer sciences Raytheon out here at Cape Canaveral. He said, "We've had you on our short list for the last year, but we couldn't talk to you while you're in uniform because of ethics rules." And so we talked about what they wanted me to do, project manager, program manager, and then I went to work for them for several years. And then in 1995, I was recruited again by, this time, Merrill Lynch, and I've been there for 25 years and have no plans to retire anytime soon.
Still active.
So.
Still active, Mac?
Oh, yes, yes. I haven't worked a day since high school.
And with about the minute we have left, were you able, Mac, to, did you have any children?
I have a son and a daughter, and they unfortunately grew up without me. If you think your wife changes a lot in 3 months, your kids are from another planet. And they resented my being gone much more than my wife did. And my daughter, after she got her law degree at Georgia State, for about 5.5 seconds, I had her thinking about going into Navy JAG. And then she decided that she didn't want to go that route. My son, he didn't really want to have anything to do with the Navy. He resented the Navy because I was gone so much that time.
Okay. Any concluding remarks?
Not really. That's pretty much it. I did end up using my GI Bill to get a master's degree from Florida Tech down here in Melbourne in project management. I figured since Computer Sciences Raytheon hired me to be a project manager, I'd better find out what I'm supposed to do.
And basically, it means more. I mean, the Navy, as influenced by your dad, really, the tradition and just the serving in that way, that meant the most to you, huh? Yes,
yes. The technology was the next strongest draw. I love science, technology, engineering, math, physics. Just being in submarines for 20 years is equivalent to getting a degree in applied physics. Tremendous amount of schools and education that I had to assimilate, everything from celestial navigation to advanced computers and electronics and missile guidance and ballistic trajectories and everything else. All of that was just fascinating to me.
Okay. So With that, we're done, right?
Okay,
Thank you, man.
Yeah. Thank you.